All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's Thursday. That means we have another episode of the MSP Initiative. It's 1 o'clock Eastern. We have our friends from the Channel Strong Tour, Ken Patterson again, and the wonderful Amy Luby. How you doing, Amy?
I'm doing great. It's good to see you guys again.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like the tour was eternity ago.
Yeah, like a year ago. I
Yeah.
feel like it's been a long time since I've seen you guys.
Yeah. Well, after 3 weeks straight, I think that's probably not a bad thing, right?
Yeah, well, we just won't talk about it. That's all.
Well, that's what we're doing on this whole. Anyway, so we're bringing everybody back from the tour to talk about what we saw, what we learned, right? And as we talked with MSPs, and actually kept in touch with MSPs that we met with on the road, right? Because it's been now a few weeks and things have progressed. We've had a couple themes, right, as we've gone along. But ultimately, Amy, I'd love to just get like a zoomed out picture. We called you up. We said, hey, we're going to go around the country 7,000 miles. What was the first thing that came to your head?
Honestly, kick ass. I think I actually said that to Ken. No, it was a great idea. It was a great idea. We needed a break. And when I say we, I don't mean just the three of us or the seven of us that were on the tour. Everybody we met needed a break. And I think that was one of the strongest themes, if you will, with conversations on the road was thank you guys for doing this. It was awesome to come out and stand out here, sometimes in the sweltering heat even, but just to have live interaction. I mean, you could feel it. It was palpable. People needed it. It was great. It was great to be able to do that and, have the opportunity to be a part of it. So thank you guys. Appreciate it.
No, thank you for taking 3 weeks out of your life to hear us drive around and complain.
My family appreciated it, so it was all good
right,
for the most
cool.
part.
That works. So Ken, we've had a lot of themes that have kind of continued to expand from the tour, right? That those things haven't really gone down. I think they've really gone up, if you would. So some of the things that we kept on running into were that MSPs are actually doing better than we thought in a lot of areas, right? I mean, not everybody's perfect, but things aren't dire like we thought it would. We've heard about security. We heard about MSPs collaborating with each other. Like, you've kept in touch with a lot of the people that we connected with along the way. What's continued along since we've been back?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Like you said, not everything is working for everybody, right? The one common theme that slowed down a little bit was projects, right? Obviously, if there's not people in their offices, you're not going to be going to their office and doing projects. But I think that they found ways to do other things in lieu of projects, and business itself picked up, of course, going in the direction of cloud. From a common theme, I think not only our community has gotten tighter, but I think some of the businesses with their employees, their relationships got tighter, because a lot of these MSP leaders are thought leaders, and they were thinking of, okay, what are we going to do now, right? We're not in the office as much or at all in some cases. And yes, it's great that we're doing these Teams calls, but what can we do a little differently? And I've been seeing the creativity of these companies, these business owners, and I'll tell you what, it's been pretty cool to see how people can pivot and come up with some really creative ways to get people together when they couldn't be together at the same place. It won't ever replace the in-person, the engineers being in person and working right next to each other and, hey, wait, I saw something like this before, and they help each other from that perspective. Just like live events will never, ever be replaced by virtual events. I think that's still there, but just the creativity, just in general, like some of the things we heard about, like, virtual yoga or virtual doggy day or virtual, all these things that these guys are doing just to try to keep their mentality intact, right? Because doing this all the time can definitely be a little bit more daunting on your mental state, and then also being stuck in one place, not really being able to get out and breathe a little bit.
For
It's the
sure.
same thing.
Sure. So Amy works remote. I work remote. Ken, you work remote. We've all been working remote. Amy, like Zoom fatigue, right? Like once you do 4 hours of calls back to back to back with the screen, you're ready to jump into like the street and like go crazy. Right?
Right. No, but Ken makes a good point. I think if you break it down, the commonality between all of the MSPs and frankly, probably all of us vendors to keep going, if you will, you've got the technology side, cloud, but you have the company culture side too. So cloud and culture was kind of a theme there. And I think the MSPs that we spoke to who were already steeped in cloud technologies fared very, very well, very well. And in fact, are moving on to add more clients, et cetera. And that progressive posture, if you will, leads into their culture. And so they were also very interested and focused on maintaining culture for their own employees and keeping them, their spirits high. So, you're right on, Ken, with that. Culture is a big deal here.
So
I'm glad you said with that. I'm not typically right on. So that was good that you pointed out just that one thing.
So come on, you're spot on more often than not.
I'm going to throw a couple of realities out there, and we'll see if everyone agrees. Right? Do you agree that people who doubled down on marketing efforts earlier into the pandemic actually panned out better as time went on? Yes or no?
Oh, for sure. I mean,
Well, let's be more
I don't know.
specific.
I
I'm
don't
sorry,
know.
Amy.
I don't know if that's pandemic specific. Your MSPs that have been more progressive with their marketing tactics and especially digital and social marketing have fared better. Obviously they were more prepared for a virtual world, right? Same could be said for vendors. Those of us, who were well positioned on the digital and social marketing side, have fared a little bit better than those that weren't. So I think the pandemic just put a spotlight on other organizations' strong spots and their weak spots, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's what a crisis does anyway.
I would agree with that 100%. You're right. I think Reese always says that it doesn't show character, it reveals it, right? From that standpoint, that's what the crisis does. But I would take it a step further and say it wasn't just marketing. It was how they were marketing. Doubling down on education, that's where the people were the most successful. The MSPs that pushed education about how do you do this? How do you work teams? How do you work from home? How do you do it securely? What are the next steps? What are you going to be able to do with your business? Like all the things that had nothing to do with selling and everything to do with education, those MSPs are faring much better right now.
Okay. So, go ahead, Amy. You had something?
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. And you're kind of really what you're talking about is leadership skills. As an entrepreneur, I was talking to I was listening to another MSP the other day who was talking about, we were scared. I was scared as a business owner. My clients who are business owners are scared too. And, I made the mental shift to say, okay, I'm scared. So now I got to learn everything I need to know about how to get through this, how to do the remote technologies and do them well. And now I'm going to educate my clients and I'm going to show them, it's going to be okay. Here's what we're going to do. And that's a strong position to pivot into, if you will, to survive any kind of crisis, frankly. But as an entrepreneur, I think that was really smart to be able to do that. Say, here's my weakness and be vulnerable enough to say, you know what, I am scared, but here are the things I'm going to do to get through this.
Yeah. So let's also think about another topic, right? So how many people did we hear from on the road, or what was the overall sentiment on, going back to doing on-site work, right? I mean, there was, different people, like as we drove to the country, right? Different people were in different mindsets, like Denver was completely different feel than Texas, or Texas was a completely different feel from North Carolina, right? Like everyone, Chicago, where we started, right? I mean, that was a completely different feel than where we all started from our own, cities, right? So, where did you think the overall sentiment was with, did people feel confident sending their people back on site? Were they still avoiding it? Was it in dire emergency? What was the overall sentiment there?
I think our MSP partners had to be on site for a lot of this. And frankly, just kind of, if you look at it one way, put themselves in harm's way, right? Put the masks on. Early on, a lot of people were even wearing gloves. But going in there because their clients needed to stay in business. We're talking about people's livelihoods, right? And in the early days, we were talking about essential business. MSPs clearly are essential, and had to just dive right in, just like a healthcare worker would, and get into those home offices and help these people stay in business and make sure that they're doing it safely from a technology perspective. So I think it was less of a will I or won't I decision. It's I have to. So how can I do this as safely as possible for myself and my team, and also for my clients?
Yeah, I think they were giving, it was interesting. So if you're talking about just in office, right? The MSPs that were working in their office already, you went to a place like Kansas City and they were working at their office, no issues. They were there. Clearly a place where less masks were worn, it was a little bit freer. Same with Texas, I would say. And then you go to places like Denver, and I think there are more people working from home, but they're still, from an IT perspective, the MSPs were still a mix of that. And the common theme I heard across all that was, we're going to give our people the option. We're going to say to them, listen, if you feel more comfortable working from home, that's great. And we're going to give them tasks, and we're going to assign those tasks. And by the way, some people became more efficient working from home. So there was that going for them. And then as far as putting people on site, it was all about being responsible, and then also making sure that their people felt comfortable going on site. So in some cases, even the owners were like, look, if my people don't want to do it, I guess I'm going to have to be the one to do it. But you're right, to Amy's point, we got to do it. We have to go on site. We have to take care of them. We are essential. And for the most part, I believe the tech community is pretty open to, if we're doing it responsibly, we can do this. We can handle taking care of these problems. And to Amy's other point, MSPs are most definitely essential. And in some cases, they're as essential as the doctors and nurses, because without the MSPs, the doctors and nurses can't work. Their businesses wouldn't function. So truly believe 100% that MSPs are so essential. And we're hoping that that foothold is being grabbed a lot more now with all this going on, so that we can point to the fact that MSPs, need to get the credit they deserve. They are definitely essential.
Fair enough. So let's talk about we saw some pretty cool offices, right? Like you walk into some place and you're like, whoa, you guys really went all out, right? And I kind of felt bad, right? Because like sometimes they weren't being used, because of all the current situation. But did you get the feeling from the decision makers in each of these places that we went to, right? Because we had MSPs hosting us in each city that we went to. Did you get the feeling that, they're looking at this into 2021 or even 2022 and maybe not really fully come back to the office anytime soon? Or is it the opposite?
I got the feeling that they were coming back. That's just my quick answer. I feel like a lot of them were saying, obviously Texas is maybe an easy example, because those guys are definitely guns blazing the minute that, something was lifted. But Texas, for example, those guys were saying, yeah, we're actually expanding our space out, and we're building out another area, and because we're utilizing more of the space. So I did see that. I think that a lot of them are going to come back. Like I said, some people will still work from home. They became more efficient, and the smart people will realize, well, if they're more efficient because they're home, they're closer to their families, they can do, their pets, whatever it may be. And then that works, then why not let them do it? But I do believe most businesses are ready to come back, the ones that we talked to, at least on the trip. What do you think, Amy?
I think it's just a blend, and a real blend of their model. So we the MSPs that hosted these events that we did with Channel Strong typically were larger, 30, 40, 50 employees, right? It's relative, many of them have service areas, if you will. Some of them have developers, etc., where it kind of lends to being together so that you can collaborate real time on the fly. So I think in a lot of those scenarios, yeah, they're kind of chomping at the bit to get back to that. Having said that, there are a lot of MSPs that have always been remote. Like they've not had a physical location. So I think it's just a blend, and if you look at the broader global business scape, if you will, all of the data is coming back saying a lot of these folks are going to either be blended or maybe not even go back to a physical office, because what we all found out was we can continue working. Business continues whether we're in a physical office or in a home office or in a Starbucks or wherever. Business continues, commerce continues. So there's just certain segments that require being in a physical place, obviously, like healthcare, things like that. You've got to have a physical location for those types of things. But for MSPs, I think it's a blend. And again, I would go back to kind of the original conversation about live human interaction. However we can make that happen, people are looking forward to that. People are missing that. So whether that means we're all going to go back to a physical office or not, we're looking forward to it when we can do it.
I get it. I mean, but even still, even if people aren't going full-time back to physical office, we touched on it before, but it's worth saying again, there was some interesting ideas on how to get the staff culture kind of kicked back into gear, right? Mm-hmm. And we were hearing like us throwing at these parking lot type things wasn't original, right? People have been tailgating since sports, started. But it seems like these teams, these offices, are really starting to adopt a similar idea, right? In order to get their people back to some sort of camaraderie, right? That's lost through the screen. Did you feel like, people will continue to go into whether it's a weekly or a bi-weekly or a monthly, some sort of in-person safely, but in-person get together?
Oh, absolutely. 100%. I mean, and that's kind of been the way, if you will, for companies who already were 100% remote. Whether it's a quarterly in-person retreat in one central location or whatever their cadence is, but definitely some kind of FaceTime. I mean, it's just really difficult to, you miss some of the subtleties of day-to-day interaction when you're 100% remote. You don't always get to spend time, if you set aside an hour for some particular meeting with a particular purpose, you don't know that your teammate an hour beforehand got some bad news about one of their kids or something like that, so giving our teams an opportunity to have those types of interactions are extremely important. And that's what builds a good team, a good culture. It's not just impersonal business stuff. It's knowing who you're working with and what they're like as a person, what their family life is. It makes a big difference.
And we used to do those even though we all were in the office, because being in the office is your day-to-day grind. We used to do personal, we would do it once a week. Where we would connect up at a local bar or some local spot and basically invite everybody and say, look, we know you guys have lives. You don't have to come to every one, but we'd love it if you guys could make it to some of them. So parts of the team would go out, we would be interactive, and we would do things kind of like what we did on the tour, right? Go play cornhole, go play darts, go whatever it may be, and bond. And we found that the parts of the team bonded. Some people who didn't normally talk to each other in the office because one person was with the dev team and one person was with the accounting team, all of a sudden got together and started doing things together, and that brought different parts of the team together. So we were kind of doing that type of stuff when I was back with my MSP before all this. And I do believe that now more than ever, to Amy's point, that if you're remote or not, having that type of stuff is going to be, it proves to be very, very, it's a very positive thing. It helps bring the team together. And we all know culture is the number one thing in any business. If your culture is right, everything else will come together. Everybody in the company knows exactly where your company's direction is. They all know, they'd all walk through a wall for each other. That makes everything so much easier. So I think now more than ever, doing things like this, being able to bring people together and have them interact in a different way, not just the work, is another whole level of bonding.
For sure.
After being on a bus for 3 weeks with you guys, I would definitely walk through a wall for Ken and George.
There you
For
go.
sure. Yeah.
So we had Dave Sobel on. We had Dave Sobel on Tuesday, and we were going through current events, right? Because he's Mr. Current Events, and he was saying that the United States and Canada are paying more and getting less than almost everywhere else in the world when it comes to connectivity, cell phone, internet, data type thing. And we pushed this theory to the max, right? Because we had a hotspot from every vendor we could get from a cell phone standpoint. We were in and out of hotels and all that jazz. So, were you surprised, or was it expected on the level of connectivity that we had as we were gallivanting around the highways?
Well, do you want to talk about the cost of that connectivity, or do you want to just talk about were we surprised about the actual connectivity? Because
both apply.
From my perspective, I know the cost was high. I will say that, yes, I'm pretty sure we had connectivity from almost everywhere. But if you needed to do some things like Amy over there, am I pointing the right way? Amy over there, she had to upload some pretty heavy stuff, and that got a little bit tricky being, having it to be that type of data and being on a bus. But other than that, connectivity was great almost everywhere we were. I didn't drop a signal or drop a connection in very many places. Other than when all 7 of us tried to get onto a video call at the same time. We had some issues, but that would be, that's my take on it. I know Amy, working at her workstation over there more than any of us, as far as on the keyboard while she was bouncing around trying to get it all done, probably had more to, talk about with heavy duty bandwidth stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, well, you're spot on. I mean, it was fine for email and typical office work, but yeah, trying to do a Zoom call or, all that video and I know I maxed out our data, I think a couple times. And until I figured out that I just needed to wait to get to the hotel. But then I was surprised, that last hotel we were in didn't have internet. Like, it was totally down.
That's right.
Yeah,
no internet.
Yeah. And so that was pretty interesting. And it was like, the gal at the front desk was like, well, I don't know if we're going to bring it back. I mean, so it was interesting to see, and now this will go in a different direction, but, kind of how these hotels have been hit hard. Some of them were well staffed, very clean. Others were like, wow, you probably should close the doors right now because this is not okay. So, but yeah, the internet access was pretty good.
We definitely saw a lot of saran wrap. That much I remember.
Yeah, we did.
Super weird. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe we should give them a message that the phone in the room is probably not as important as the internet access, for sure.
Well, here's what I want to know. When was the last time that phone was actually used and or cleaned? And then wrapping it in saran wrap, did that really make a difference? Like, why don't you just remove it?
Yeah, they should just do the app thing, right? You want to call the front desk, press it on the app, right?
Exactly.
One of the other things that we really right, probably don't see it as much, but we did, and we almost bring it up on every call. We don't realize what America looks like from the road, right? Like long haul driving, right? And we saw a little bit of a different side of America when we started hitting truck stops and middle of nowhere in the middle of the desert. And of course in Iowa, right, we had the largest truck stop in the world, which seemed like it was own little city kind of thing going on in there. So, it's very true. You go like an hour and a half, 2 hours out of every major metro, and it's completely different, right? Mm-hmm. Was there any particular place that we drove through, stopped, any city we went to, any place we stayed at that you were like, wow, totally had no clue, and this was not what I expected?
Well, I've traveled a lot, and driving is my preferred mode of transportation. So I've seen a lot of the country.
It makes sense now, Ken.
Yeah.
You asked that question in the beginning. Go ahead.
Well, so it was really nice. I like that kind of travel. I think we have a beautiful country, and I love that you can literally in a day go from plains to mountains to desert. Like, where else can you do that in one country, right? So I really enjoyed that aspect. And, you guys probably thought I was just spacing off, but I spent a lot of time looking out the windows, just, looking at the beautiful country that we've got. So that was fun for me. I wasn't too terribly surprised. My favorite parts are between the big cities. Because, that's where you kind of meet real people, right? The kind of bones of the country, and where you see different lifestyles and different perspectives, and you learn different ways. And the truck stop was certainly interesting in Iowa.
The largest truck stop, Iowa, yes. I will agree. I can't say that enough. Like, that was, you want to talk about the bones of the country.
Right?
Holy moly. I will say that I still will say that. But I agree with you. I was looking out the window quite a bit, and I'm not typically that kind of guy, right? Who like, ooh, look at the pretty, but I kept saying it to you guys, look at this view. Hey, look over here. Look over here. Like, it just kept on coming out of me because I don't see that type of stuff. I don't see the mountains, definitely don't see a lot of mountains other than now, my office is in Denver, so I go to Denver quite a bit, but I don't get to see that on a drive and be able to look to one side and see this big, beautiful lake, and then look out the other side and see the mountains or even the plains. Just everything was really, really cool. I mean, obviously it was interesting driving by the border wall. That was interesting, being that close to Mexico.
I thought so too. That was
watching George hide under a blanket until we got past Border Patrol.
That was that I did not realize how close that highway going across the southern. I had no clue. None.
Me either.
I thought there was like space. Some spaces there's not. Especially El Paso. El Paso is right on it. I had never been to El Paso before.
Yeah, you look to the left and you see these little teeny houses in El Paso. You look to the right and you see a wall, and then you see a highway on the other side with people driving, and it's Mexico. It's pretty crazy to even think about.
100%. Going back to what we learned from people on the road, did you feel that, was there any particular size, right? Because we had anywhere from a small shop to come out to the parking lot, all the way to, again, some of the people that hosted us were pretty big in certain areas. Was there a size of company that you felt when you were talking to them, they didn't quite have it yet, right? They were still trying to figure out maybe the maturity of how to run the business, right? From an MSP standpoint. Or did you feel that most people were past that we talked to?
I mean, I think it's, to use Amy's word, it's a blend. I think that that's definitely.
So what was the demarcation point, right? Was it sub 5? Was it over 10? Like, where did you feel?
Let's be fair about this. I think that from what I've seen, you could have someone be sub 10 who's super mature, and you could have someone that's sub 50 who's not very mature, right? Just got lucky and their business was going in the right direction, but there's still a majority of their business is not pushing in the right direction, or they haven't thought about moving to managed services or towards the cloud as heavily as they probably should be. So, I take that. I do, personally, I take that to heart when I talk about maturity and I talk about where people are at, because I do really believe that, I met somebody on the road that was 4 people, and I'll tell you what, he was very mature, knew where his company was going, had decision-making in mind, wanted to get to the cloud at a higher rate, still suffering a little bit through what's going on because he wasn't quite there yet, but he had it all in place and was making the decisions to move forward. So from my perspective, I think doing it based on, those numbers doesn't always work out accurately, because I do believe, you could be 4 people and be pretty mature and have a direction, and you could be 40 people and still not quite get it, if that makes sense.
Okay. It's a good position. I mean, it all depends on the experience of the business, right? And the people that are running it. Amy, what do you think?
I have a little bit different perspective on this. There are many, many entrepreneurs that run a business, and we might call it a lifestyle business. And we might say that they're less mature than others. A lot of times a lifestyle business is smaller. It's less than 5 employees usually. I don't see that defines maturity as much as just who's running the business. I mean, as you pointed out, Ken, you can have 4 employees and be very mature, be using cutting edge technologies, have all your clients in the cloud, et cetera, which would be part of that maturity model, right? As opposed to doing everything on premises, et cetera, whatever you're doing. I think to conclude with that, I mean, there's a blend all through our channel of large, aggressively growing companies versus companies that are good at the size they're at, but they're still very mature in their model. If you were to look at how they make decisions, what type of operational efficiency they're running through, their financial efficiencies, and the technologies they're using. So I think it's a good blend, and just depends on how you look at them.
Fair enough.
I agree.
Do you think that, and again, this is just feeding off this idea, do you think that this 20% to the bottom line is that real, right? Like they say mature, top, best in class is 20% and above in net profits, right? Is that the number that everybody should be basing their business on when they're trying to measure how far along they are? Or is that a pipe dream?
I think those numbers come from our kind of consulting category of folks who are trying to help MSPs be better. Mm-hmm. You see different numbers from our analysts who tell us that profit margin in the MSP space is very, very low. So I think it depends on who you're listening to. And frankly, I think it's the reality on the street is that it's somewhere in between, really. I mean, running an IT services business, you've got to be at 30% gross margin in order to tread water. Okay, so stay even, not have money for R&D or anything like that. So where are you really? I don't know that anybody really, really knows. I think that we have consultants over here that say this is where you should be and best in class is this. But I don't know that that's, I don't know. I'm going to say it. I think it's a very arbitrary, and I think it's something that, depending on where you're at in your business maturity model and your leadership maturity quotient, if you will, as an entrepreneur, you take all that information in. It's all good information to have. You look at the business that you want to have and the business that you have, and you make adjustments to get to where you want to be. Yeah. And I think, yeah, so that's about all I can say about
that clearly comes from somebody who is in the weeds with everybody else. So
right.
So
yeah.
that's good.
I think it's about a goal. I think it's about setting a goal. To Amy's point, like the consultants are giving them this number and saying, ideally this is the number where you should be at, right? And at least they're giving them a number, because Amy knows as well as typically when you start out as an MSP, there's no goals, there's no process. You're just kind of throwing it all together. And now you have to set the process and you have to say, okay, what's our goal here? Instead of running around, with 5,000 things going on, at least have that goal. So I think it's nice to have as a goal, but I agree with Amy. There's definitely a lot of numbers in between where it could probably be, but I think if we didn't have the goal in the first place, there'd be nothing to strive for at least and get you there. I don't think anybody should be thinking they're failing if they're not getting to that number either. Everybody knows their own business better than we do. You
Fair.
should know where your profit is going to be, where you're making money. And if you don't know that, then you should definitely get some help in that area for sure.
And the thing is, you know what? There is no real cookie cutter solution for a service organization. There's never going to be, and there isn't one in any other type of organization either. I mean, in my career, I've literally worked with thousands of MSPs and probably a couple hundred of companies outside of the IT space. There is no silver bullet. There is no 100% do it this way approach. Every entrepreneur is unique. That's why they're an entrepreneur. I mean, if you aren't built that way, to be creative, to look at things different, to do things out of the box, you're working for somebody, okay? Yeah. So entrepreneurs, by definition and by their own nature, do things differently. They solve problems in unique and creative ways. And when they hit that mark, that's when they have a truly successful organization. Building those bits and bytes together to create that is what makes each business unique. And I don't think that you can apply, and maybe this is the entrepreneur in me, I don't think you can apply a cookie cutter to any entrepreneur and say, you know, if you do these 10 things, you're going to be best in class. Well, I don't know, because I can talk to 10 different entrepreneurs and they're doing things very, very differently.
Yeah, I think that if that was the case, Amy, every single company would be successful, right? So yeah. It's proof that that's the case too. And I would also say not every owner is an entrepreneur.
Sure.
Let's separate that as well, right? And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm just saying, you know, some people who aren't entrepreneurs are just don't want to work for somebody else, right? They start a business and they plug away and they do their thing. And some of them, some I've been meeting a lot lately, some of them have some entrepreneurial spirit, but definitely are not entrepreneurial. They're more techie, but they're also getting smart enough to realize where they need help. And I think that's the key. You don't have to be a full-on entrepreneurial mind to start a business and do this stuff. You just have to realize where you need help and get that help in those areas. I think that's something to take as well with this whole thing.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, you know, if you fill a room with people who all think about things the exact same way, they're never going to get out of the room. Like, it's just impossible. You've got to have people who bring something else to the table that you don't possess, because nobody possesses every single thing they need in order to be successful in whatever they're doing. Everybody needs help. And if you can acknowledge that and get to that level of humility and say, you know, I don't know everything and I just made a ton of mistakes. How do I fix this? I've got to bring in a new perspective. Yep. I mean, that's how businesses grow.
Fair enough. So, 100%. You know, along this thought, and we'll take a turn after this one, but I did a couple sessions with the guys over at Ninja, and there's a lot of guys out there that just can't find a way, or they don't fathom that they can get their rates up to the 150, the 175, the 200 plus, right? They hear those numbers and they're like, "You're crazy. You're on drugs. Pass it over." So what, you know, and some of them are like, hey, our area doesn't bear that price, right? They're just in a maybe, you know, more rural area, and that's not the prevailing price that'll fly. I get that. But to some degree, like, especially with security, especially with cloud, especially with all of these subscription-based services that everybody seems to be forced into one way or another, well, you can't hide from it. You got to be able to get there at some point. So, for, you know, what is the major, you know, is it legitimate to say that, hey, my area just won't pay that? Is it really legitimate, or is it a business design thing?
Go ahead, Amy.
Well, Again, I believe that's the wrong conversation to be having.
Okay.
I think that if you are going to have a value-based conversation with your client, you need to be talking about outcomes, not about hourly rates. So client has a goal, whatever that goal is. And if I can support that goal through technology and services, what does that mean to that client? Does it mean greater efficiency? Does it mean more to their bottom line? Does that mean they're saving money? What is it? Because that's what the entrepreneur cares about, right? Someone who's running a business or just a business line needs to know, can I save money? Can I make more money? Or can I be more efficient? And if you're speaking to that, you're speaking value. And that has never been an hourly rate. An hourly rate is, can you unclog my toilet? What's it going to cost? Like, okay, that's something you apply an hourly rate to.
Or it could be a per user rate or a per machine.
Well, yeah, I think George was talking about per user rate of getting 150 to 200 per user for full blown managed services. I think that's more what he's going with.
Oh, I know what he's going with, but I'm just saying, I don't think that's the right question. I think that we, as a channel, as MSPs, should be looking at outcomes rather than hourly rates. I think that we should be thinking differently. But I have thought that from the very beginning. I don't think we ever should have been talking about hourly rates. That's a break fix thing. That's what a break fix model is. And today, when you talk about maturity model, as the MSP model has matured over the last almost 20 years, we're in the outcome-based era. That's where we're at today. And so, yes, you need to know internally with your finances when you're looking at things. What is my hourly cost per head count? I need to know what all the things, the technologies that I'm putting in place today, I need to know my costs. But when I translate that to my value statement and the outcomes I'm going to deliver to my client, that to me is more of a monthly rate or quarterly, whatever your model is. And you don't necessarily talk about the hourly headcount rate to the client. That's just an internal cost that I need to know about to build into my outcomes. Does that make sense? It's a different conversation and it's a different way of.
I always tell my guys, it's like you're working backwards, right? Hey, this is where I need to get to. All right, let's go backwards from there and figure out how I get there, right? And then, like, it's, I just maybe it's because I just went and saw Tenet in the movie theater that apparently nobody wanted to go to, but hey, you can go backwards from that point in time to get, and then ultimately get to where you're at now, and you view things differently when you're moving in that direction versus, hey, we're just going to try, and hopefully we get where we're trying to go, right? So I don't know. I feel like that's kind of what you're saying. I know I took a very nouveau way to say that, but.
Well, no, I mean, you're talking about the maturity model, right? You start a business and more often than not, you do a cost plus model, figure out what everything costs me. I'm going to add some margin to it. And maybe I'm going to listen to the consultants and tell me what my cost plus margin should be, and then I go from there. I get the maturity model and what you're saying, because that's exactly what it is, cost plus. In order to derive the value that you're looking for out of your own organization and also deliver value to your client, there's another evolution there, which is your value-based pricing, your outcome-based pricing. And that's where you need to get to, but you have to know your cost plus first. You absolutely have to.
Sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. So another little wrench in the works, Amy, and I know because you've worked in some rural places. So let's talk about the cost of the.
That may or may not have corn. I don't know.
The one piece that comes up here, and again, I'm on board with everything you just said because I'm all about solution, not products, value. All the things you said were spot on. But we also know that these tools and solutions cost the same whether you're in Omaha, Nebraska, or you're in Boston, Massachusetts. And what they're saying, their question is, if I'm paying the same exact price for the same tools and want to make, I want to be able to profit off of that, what's happening in places like New Mexico and maybe Omaha, I don't know, but like in places that maybe not are like major cities, how do I charge the same amount of money to make a good profit on those tools, those same tools that people in Boston, people in Philly, people in major cities are charging? I think, George, is that really where you're kind of coming from? Like people that are saying
that seems to be a reoccurring theme. Yeah, these
Right.
guys think that it's just not doable.
And I don't know the answer either, because I've never actually had a business in that situation. So as you both know, I'm not a silver bullet guy either. I don't believe every solution works for everybody. You got to take bits and pieces and apply it to what you're doing. But Amy, your point kind of made sense, because I mean, I know they cost the same, but they have to realize what that cost is, work backwards, and then see how that's going to apply to the solution. Like you said, what is the solution going to be? What's the value prop going to be, and work backwards from that. So I just wonder if they're paying the same price for the solutions and products. How would we help people in those situations? Because George is right, that does come up quite a bit.
You know, it's interesting if you think about, so you're kind of talking about two different mindsets. I'll call it that for lack of a better term. You know, you have, and this has just been in my experience, the group of folks that say, I can't sell that, it's too expensive, or that, you know, my market won't support that, whatever their excuse is, for not being able to do that particular thing, that permeates the whole business. Okay, that's a whole different mindset. If you go over here and you start talking to MSPs or any entrepreneur who isn't thinking that way, and is thinking, okay, how much value do I actually deliver to my client? And what is that value worth? That's a whole different mindset. That's a whole different business. And you're going to find those folks in every market. I mean, I live in Omaha, Nebraska. There are extremely successful MSPs in my region who understand how to market, sell, position, value versus product and my hourly rate.
Right.
There are tons of hourly rate people here. There are less super successful large MSPs, but there are, and they charge a premium price. They do. So, for me, I remember, when I was selling to end users as an MSP, one of my quick qualifiers was how that potential client looked at technology. And if they saw it as a necessary evil and didn't want to pay, they just want to get the cheapest thing possible, thank you very much, sir, ma'am. I'm going to move on and find a client that's going to be a good fit for my company. So I think it's a bigger issue than just actually the cost plus. I mean, it's really how you grow your business and how you approach that growth.
Yeah, makes sense. It's a good answer.
So, looking at the whole big picture then, right? If you were to have somebody start brand new today, right? They didn't make the investments in the tools 10 years ago. They didn't have that legacy kind of weight that they've built up over time, right? They're starting new. I know Ken jokes about it all the time. It's like, if I knew what the stuff that I have out there today, I should just go and start another one. And with the whole idea of, hey, stay lean, right? Don't spend until you absolutely have to make it, to progress, your agenda. What is that new MSP look at, right? What is their view? Do you to everyone's point so far, is it, hey, before you go and buy anything, figure out what your game plan is. What are you trying to help people do? And then work from there. And if it's just, hey, I'm a generalist, right? I just like IT. I like helping people, how can I do that with today's technology? Where would you tell people to start looking to determine what their business is going to help solve?
I'll tell you right out of the gate, I'd tell the generalist to go work for an MSP.
Okay.
That's the first thing I would say. If you're just someone that wants to go out there and help people, jumping into this as a business probably is not the right direction. That's just my 2 cents. I think from an MSP perspective, to Amy's point and what you just alluded to, you have to know what you want to do first. I think that's the mistake that we all of us have made and MSPs make. Oh, I do IT. I'm going to jump into this IT world here and I'm going to start getting customers. And well, why are you getting customers before you even know what you want your customers to look like? When we made that mistake in the past, we had to weed those guys out and then go back after the ones we know we want now. To Amy's point, if they don't value what you do, why are you trying to sell to them? So I think finding out what you want to do first and how you want to approach it, that's the first step for any business, right? I mean, you should know what you want to do and how you're going to do it first, figure out that value, and then you can build up your stack and build off of that. And I think it's definitely a good time to still do this. It's actually a great time because cloud has just been, sped up at least 5 years based on this whole, this whole thing that just happened. Just it's pushed out to everybody. So that's kind of the simple, easy answer as far as if there are people looking to get in with what they should be doing, that's what they should do. And I know Amy will definitely have some stuff to add on to this because
well, I'll even throw another wrinkle because I feel like Amy might be saying the same thing. But then where do I go to look to figure it out?
The channel, these people, MSPs, other MSPs. That's your first place. People like Amy, people like George, vendors, MSPs, get a feel for the field you're jumping into. Peer groups. There's just so much information you can get before you jump in. That I feel like that's how I learned everything I learned. I was no genius at any of this. I probably wouldn't even think of myself as an entrepreneur. Maybe I do think a little bit outside the box, but still maybe not even think of that. But it was the people that I got to know, even moving through this along the way. I mean, Amy, how many times have we had conversations over the last 10 years just about MSPs type stuff where just, throwing stuff around and trying to get ideas about what I'm going to do to handle something, what you're going to do to handle something. Using your peers. Don't be afraid to talk to other people in the business. Everybody's pretty open about helping each other out.
I think my two favorite conversations of ours, Ken, one was that Mexican place in downtown Boston that you took me to. And the other one was smoking my first cigar, which was with you at the Gaylord in Dallas.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So anyway, side note.
And that was, by the way, that was 8 years ago. That one in Dallas. It just popped up on my my memory thing. I was like, holy moly, 8 years.
Wow. Yeah. I think, in IT, the only thing that differentiates MSP number one from MSP number two is service. It's literally the only differentiator because we all have access to the same technologies, the same manufacturers, the same vendors, the same distributors, the same cloud companies. We can procure any of these technologies. It's how we deliver the service that makes us different. And so if I were to give anybody advice, I would tell them to really think about that. Really think about that. Because as MSPs, we all tend to get real nerdy and talk tools and software and technology before we talk about business delivery process. But it's the service delivery that makes us different. So I would really, really think about that much longer, much harder than I think about the actual technologies. Because you can swap out, tomorrow there's going to be some better technology, right? We can always swap that out, but we can't change how we do what we do as quickly and as easily. So that's the most important piece, in my opinion, than anything.
Right on. Favorite food from the trip?
Oh, wow. That Asian fusion barbecue bistro thing in Fort Worth. That was my favorite. From the food trucks. Oh my gosh. Right now, all I can remember is cheeseburgers. I mean, do we have anything other than cheeseburgers?
Yeah, oh my Lord, we had pizza, we had barbecue, we had so many different, you know why? You were so busy.
Yeah, that was, well, and I couldn't stand eating in the heat. So I was always getting my food truck food like right before we pulled out of the parking lot and tried to eat it in there. So yeah, I think, yeah, probably barbecue would have been my favorite, I think. The funnel cakes were awesome in Kansas City, though. I got to tell you that.
I'll take that credit for that one. There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
It all happened by accident, though, because the truck that we were supposed to get, something happened. And at the last minute, I'm like, maybe I'll just throw some variety in there. And a funnel cake truck just happened to pop up.
Yeah.
Only in
funnel
Kansas
cakes
City.
are awesome in the Midwest.
Yeah, that was good.
Last thoughts, right? Would you recommend, there's a lot of MSPs that they never go to events. They never walk out of their office. Sometimes they're just too in their business to be able to detach, right? Sometimes people do this, to get a break, take a vacation, learn more, whatever. If you were to tell people, hey, sometimes you should get out of the cave and see what's going on, would you tell them try once a year? Would you tell them don't waste your time? What's your feeling?
Well, since I met all of you at an event, it's kind of hard for me to say not to go to an event and not do too many. I was an event. I don't want to say the word on here. I frequented events quite a bit. And I won't say that every event was equal as far as the content, but I will say that most events were equal with the people. My networking, the things that I did separate from the event were far advanced beyond what happened at the event. Now, some of the events will have some great content, some great speakers, and that's all bonuses. Plus, you get to meet vendors and understand what they're doing and see other tools, get to know new tools and toys. And I don't recommend taking them all and going back and throwing them at your team. That's a whole other conversation.
The cards,
but yeah, exactly. Here's all the shiny toys, guys. Let's figure them all out. And then nothing gets figured out. But the people, it's the connections that you make at these events. That's what you should be working hard at. Go to larger events that have mature MSPs at the events. And I guarantee you, you'll find any one of these people in a hallway and a lobby bar or whatever it may be. So I say there is a fine line for doing too many of them, but I would say do as many as you can when you find that value as you're going along. I met almost every contact I have at one of these events, whether it be the MSPs I met while I was an MSP, helped me grow my business, to vendors that I met, to just everybody in between. And most of these people are become really, really close friends and people I trust when I'm making business decisions. I can reach out and do something like that. So for me, and I'm sure it's going to be similar for both of you guys, but for me, go to as many as you can. Make sure that they have value for you, though.
Yeah, I would just say, find the mode of sharing that you're comfortable with. If it's a peer group, a Facebook group, a live event, a couple live events, whatever it is, do that. It's good to hear different perspective. It's good to hear how somebody else is solving a problem that you might have in your business. So whatever mode of sharing is comfortable, do it. And then, at least try one thing a year that's not comfortable. And if events are not comfortable for you, try one. Live events, I should say. And that's just me. I mean, I tend to want to push myself into uncomfortable situations to expand my ability to deal with those and to learn new things. So, that's how I've done it. So
thus going on a bus tour for 3 weeks.
Yeah, with a bunch of dudes and only one other girl. It was, that was a challenge. We can talk about that on another trip, but.
Well, I appreciate everybody jumping on. Thanks everybody for watching this. This is recorded and on MSPinitiative.com. You can check out all of the people that we interviewed and stops that we made and cities that we ran through at MSPinitiative.com/channel strong tour, or just search #ChannelStrong on your favorite social media platform. We will be back every Tuesday and Thursday, 1 o'clock Eastern time, and you'll see more faces from the tour. And who knows, there might be a future where we go and venture out into the world again to see what's happening as time has progressed. Thank you very much for watching. Guys, thanks for jumping on, and we'll catch everybody soon.
Thanks, guys. Bye.